roughly equal on both sides. General Falkenhayn and General Pétain of the French side, with his "Ils ne passeront pas," they shall not pass, should have been put in a cage like gladiators to fight it out on their own, to see who was a bigger man without ultimately wiping out millions of their own. Falkenhayn's negative method of personal warfare caused Germany to lose many soldiers. He drew out the battle longer than it should have been, and ultimately the war. No tactical or strategic advantage was gained, only casualties, and this in the end costed him his dismissal. At a glance, that battle seems like testosterone at its best, but ostensibly, war is too complex to sum it up so simply. I quote General George Patton again when he says, "War is simple, direct, and ruthless, and it takes a simple, direct, and ruthless man to wage it." Thus, the results of a war depend on these generals that plan it. Was it based on sound or unsound pre-war planning? Did they fight beside their men? Did they respect their lives? This is where leadership is of great value. Exemplary leadership as it pertains to Trinidad and our wars can be found in our Spanish and colonial days. The enigmatic Spanish governor Don Diego Escobar in 17th century Trinidad led passionately, by example, his Amerindian forces and his dedicated soldiers into battle after battle defending our country. He once launched an impressive strike at the Dutch fort in Tobago with only 80 of his men, against an incredible 300 Dutch strong. Also, Picton again was a leader of men. He was able to hold together so many different ethnic groups in Trinidad at that time. They were able to both skillfully protect Trinidad and its peoples from its many aggressors, both external and internal. Thus, through war, they helped us benefit today. Thirdly, the war must have a reasonable chance of success. The cost and advantage of the impending war must be calculated fully and pre-planned. If it cannot meet the required standards, it cannot be a justified war. Human life must not be wasted. Hence, battles such as the Somme and Verdun in the First World War understandably haunted Europe for many years. The Vietnam War was also a failure, not calculated fully and therefore not morally sound. A reasonable chance of success is the initial goal, but sometimes, as expected, defeat is in the air. This is where leadership comes in again and is valuable in war. A charismatic leader can reach each soldier and overcome probable defeat. Sir Winston Churchill in 1940, on the brink of defeat to Germany, said, "Let us therefore brace ourselves to do our duty and so bear ourselves that if the British Commonwealth and its empire lasts for 1,000 years, men will say, this was their finest hour." And what is our aim? Victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory however long and hard the road may be. For without victory, there is no survival. Another condition of war is that the situation after the war must be better than what was initially existing. The war must, simply put, save the people. Then there is a principle of proportionality. This demands that a battle ends before it becomes a massacre. Its aim is to minimize casualties and destruction. One must only use the force and weapons necessary for that battle or that particular injury. Only right that specific wrong and no more. In other words, no nuclear weapons for mass destruction. Finally, there is discrimination. The soldier must discriminate between armed combatants and non-combatants. Civilians must not be targets, but realism comes in here. Sometimes civilians will unfortunately be accidental targets, as military targets are hidden in civilian areas. Thus, realistically, it is quite difficult, if not near impossible, to expect nations to fight morally in wartime. It is a war. War is brutal, violent, and a drive for power. Only the strong can survive. We cannot forget the soldiers' conduct during the war. Every soldier and general is expected to know the just war theories. They must obey all international laws on weapon prohibition and adhere to these rules on the battlefield. POWs, prisoners of war, POWs must be justly treated. The wounded enemy must be disarmed, receive medical attention, and quarantined in a safe place away from the ensuing battle. He must be fed and looked after until the war is over. At that point, you would be exchanged for one own's POWs. This is all well and good and a good little neat package if you're dealing with one of our own. That is, similar enemies, but these terrorists do not love what we love. They hate our very existence and our freedom. They loathe the democratic society, and they become martyrs in their country from as young as 10 when they kill us. They are the types who fight nasty. They are the types that shoot you in the back. They are the types that behead you. So my question is, do terrorists really deserve such protection too? Today, there is much controversy with this, as you know. POWs are being treated badly in Cuba, Iraq, Pakistan, and Abu Dhabi. Even though these soldiers are taught just war theories, these war crimes still exist today. My theory is, of course they exist, because religion divides people. The enemy fights his holy war, according to the Quran, totally opposite and to the disgust of good Christian morals. They speak a different language and have different beliefs. As in the case of America and Iraq, Iran, or Afghanistan, there will always be hate. The war will never end. Now, if this war can never end, is it now really justifiable to continue it? I believe yes. For America and her allies at all costs, we must quell the evils of terrorism all over the world. Our silence is consent. We must face the evil, even if it means down the barrel of a gun. It is our duty for all mankind and our children's future. The final condition for a just war is its termination. There must be an end in sight with possibly a peace settlement or treaty. Example, World War I Germany had to hand over basically her whole fleet. The civilians must not be part of the post-war settlements. In other words, they should not be punished for the nation's wrongdoings, which is going on today. War crimes trials must be made public for soldiers in the wrong as well as the enemy. Example, Saddam Hussein on trial today for the world to see. Finally, the country inflicted by war must not be left in ruin. There needs to be some sort of rehabilitation for the country, the economy, and the people displaced by this war. Prisoners, families, women, and orphan children must be all looked after. A new, legitimate, morally sound government may also be organized temporarily. A militaristic government would have no place. The downside, though, is that war is lengthy. Rehabilitation can take from as much as 8 to 12 years once the war ends. Most of the time, the person that began the war in the first place is not the same one that ends it, so it can be longer than it should be. Then there is the other view, the pacifists. These people do not believe in the violence of war. They believe the unarmed masses marching toward a common cause is a powerful and just enough weapon against the armed cowards. Mahatma Gandhi was a pacifist who was successful in this approach as he led his people and took on the might of the British Empire. Another well-known pacifist and activist is Martin Luther King. His goal was peace, and his philosophy was that the change to peace must start with ourselves. We must take responsibility for our own actions, our nations, and the future generation. His belief is we were born innocent and essentially good, and have evolved to greatness such as walking on the moon. So we must be able to make the simple choice not to fight. The truth is, we need Martin Luther Kings and the Gandhis as our conscience to temper our need for power and dominance, to guide us down the right road. We may in the end have a battle, but it may be an honorable battle, such as General Miranda, statue there, such as General Miranda's nobility of war, pride and duty to fight in the South American Revolution. To sum up, war does not settle anything. All it does is destroy families, homes, communities, and unsettles little children. And when the war goes very wrong, as it usually does, how do you explain it to an innocent 4-year-old crying next to his mother, whose head is half open, spewing blood from shell fire? It tears people apart. It destroys its soldiers forever, and the innocent who blindly follow. The battle that we win today is not permanent. Man must have revenge. We are our own worst enemy. With technology comes the need for more power, and the technology that we have today will destroy us in a matter of hours. It's simple. We must coexist or not exist. As happened in the past, war also bankrupts economies. During World War II, the manufacturers were the only ones that profited, as their new big client was the government, and the civilians became poorer. Manufacturers switched from making shirts to mosquito netting, from model trains to bomb fuses, from kitchen sinks to cartridge cases. This industrial revolution depleted the economy. When the supply of rubber dwindled for military vehicles, civilians had to hand in all their rubber shoes, their rubber hoses, old tires, gloves, and even bathing caps to help the war effort. There inevitably was drastic rationing. This also happened right here in Trinidad. Through all this turmoil, the peoples of America were made more war-minded through advertising. The exaggerated newspapers putting the glory back into the war and using movie stars such as Betty Gable and Loretta Young. Today, the U.S. has sacrificed their own progress for war. They have spent and will be spending a lot more on the technologies of war for their protection. The enemy and themselves are building up every day varieties of munitions and more powerful weapons. This war will continue for a long time. It's been almost 5 years since the war on terror began, and the enemy has had lots of time to counterattack and think up new wars and technologies. The same generals are in charge. Maybe this is the problem. They need new thinkers for a formidable, successful, pre-war planned effort. We must strive for peace wherever and whenever possible, but evil must not go unchecked. Peace is the goal, but when it cannot be achieved without force, force must be used. As horrible as war is, it will be preferred to a totalitarian system, although war might be so destructible, as mentioned earlier, that the totalitarian system becomes acceptable. In closing, we must remember, Osama bin Laden once said, the difference between the Western world and us is that they love life and we love death. Thus, as joy knows pain and pain knows joy, so does war know peace and peace will know war. Thank you.